Hi, everyone. Welcome to the third session of our little demonstration on how to do presentation using LaTeX from RStudio. In the last session, we ran the first lines of code and copied the raw results from the console to LaTeX using verbatim. And I showed you briefly how to deal with the one major thing you have to deal with in verbatim, which is when lines run past the edge of the page. In this session, we're going to run a couple of plots, export them from RStudio, copy them over, and use them in LaTeX. And so let's get started. The first thing I want to do is get that LaTeX file open again. Last time I opened it from the open in the file menu. You can also use open recent. It's right there. And so I'm just going to use open recent this time. I'm going to scroll down. Everything is still there. We've still got our title page and our headings, and there is that raw code that we used before. So now I want to create section 2, and I'm going to use the section command from text or from LaTeX, and RStudio is going to help me to fill it in. And there are three options that TexStudio is going to give me. One is to give it a title, and it's just the standard command, and this will actually, it's the top one, and it will actually give it the title and also give it a number. I don't want to give it a number, so I'm going to use the one where it adds an asterisk, so it's section asterisk title, and that will just give the title. There's also an option to give a short title, and I've never used that, so I don't know exactly how it would turn out, but feel free to play around with that. And the way that the commands in LaTeX all start, in case, just to go back to the basics a little bit, almost everything in LaTeX that is a command starts out by typing that backslash, and then you can start typing the command, whatever it is. Like this is the, if I want some italic text, that's the command. And if you're using our TexStudio, it's an environment that's designed to make that easier for you. And as soon as, you just saw it, it's kind of like RStudio. As soon as I start typing something, it starts giving me options. And so I don't have to remember exactly how to type every command. So that's really useful. Now I want to change the title of this. I want to call this Part 2 Plots. So we're ready to start with Part 2 Plots. I'm going to go over to RStudio now and get started. This is some stuff that I'm already working on. I opened a different project just briefly. I wanted some plots. Here's the plot that I did. I've got a whole bunch of them. And I'll get rid of all of those by hitting the broom. My environment is absolutely full of stuff. I've got all these models that I ran. I've got several different data frames from where I was cleaning data. And I'm in a completely different directory because this is another project. So now I'm going to come over and I'm going to get rid of all of that by opening the project we want to open. I'm not going to save that because I didn't actually do anything. It was just a demonstration. So I'm coming to RStudio projects, and which is just, this is my computer's layout, but back down to the lab directory, which again, this part, POLS 6481, spring 2021, that should be what you should be looking for. You've got that somewhere on your computer, and in that main directory, there's this project. If you have projects, if you have gone and set up projects in the individual directories and you're having problems, that may be part of your issue because you should be opening just that main project. It may take just a second because this other project is fairly big. So, okay, so now we're back over. As you can see, the environment is now empty. The console, there's no script open, so the console is big. We're back over in the data directory because I was showing you some stuff from that in the last session, and so that's where it took me. So we're going to come back over to the demonstration presentation directory, and I'm going to reopen this script. And you can see all those LaTeX files are out there now. So now we're going to reopen this script, and I'm going to just rerun all of those first lines, including that line that had the error, just in order to get the data loaded and get to the spot where we need to be to start working on the plots. So now we're going to plot one of the explanatory variables that I use against a common control variable for conflict. And multicollinearity rears its ugly head here. But I'm going to do something similar to what gets done in the lab, where I do this for 2 different years. And in the lab, I think the years are 1990 and 1991 or something like that. The point was, I think in the lab, it was around some kind of a policy change. The years I'm going to use are 1984 and 1992, because with the data I'm using, the Cold War was important. So 1984 was the year before Mikhail Gorbachev took over in the Soviet Union, and 1992 was the year after he left. So it was the sort of transition period for the Cold War. So what I've done here is adapted the lab code. And I'm just going to start with, I'm just going to run it to get our plots. So there's our first plot. There's our second plot. And we'll come back to those in a minute, and we'll export them and we'll take them over. But I want to talk about how I built the plot above. So this is and this plot as well. So this is the code from the lab. And pdata was the name of the data frame in the lab. My data frame I named panel NDC. Beer tax is a variable name from the pdata data frame. I use transformative ideology. That's a variable from my data frame. The pdata $year equal 1982 does just what it sounds like. In the square brackets like that, it says we're plotting that data, but this variable, but only from the cases where it's 1984, 1982 in the lab, 1984 in this demonstration. I have to obviously use the data frame name that I use, which is panel NDC. So if I used pdata, it wouldn't do any good because I don't have something called pdata. The second thing I'm plotting is peace years. So transformative ideology is one of my explanatory variables. Peace years is a common control variable in international conflict work. So it's something that I'd want to use. So I have an actual variable by that name in my data frame. So I will plot that, and again, only where the year equals 1984. XLab is just the label that goes on the x-axis. YLab is the label that goes on the y-axis. So in the lab, it was tax on a case of beer, and VF Rawl, which was the variable name. I'm going to tell you that for presentation purposes, your YLab should not be VF Rawl. If your YLab is VF Rawl, you're not doing it right. You need to, when you write that label, even if that's what it is, that needs to be, if you're going to take the trouble to have a label, it should be vehicle fatality rate per 10,000, so that people know what you're talking about. Don't just use the bare variable name. And you don't even have to edit it in LaTeX if you edit it there. And then the next step was to create this line. In the lab, it was done creating this model named bymod.8082. I named mine bymod.1984 because I'm just basically adapting the code. And so this is the process. The first part of this is going through and figuring out which parts of this code are our commands and which parts are data frame, which parts are variables, which parts are, like the 1982 is an actual variable possibility, like a value for the variable. So it's figuring that out. And then, figuring out, oh, XLab, the first time you use it, you're going to go, what's this? And you might see regime transformative ideology. And even without opening the help file, if you had run this and you saw that pops up down here, and years of peace pops up over here, and this is the x-axis and this is the y-axis. That's part of the process of learning by adapting somebody else's code. And it really is a pretty decent way to learn in bite-sized chunks. So that's what I did there. And then, so I created this model. It's just a simple regression model, regressing peace years and regressing peace years against transformative ideology. This is what I'm trying to show is the correlation actually between one of the control variables and one of the explanatory variables. So then I want to get that line. And so we use the AB line, and that is a command in the plotting, in the general plot function for R. So I use that AB line, and my AB line calls the model. And so that's what that is. And so I did that for 1984, and I also did it for 1992. And so that's what these are. And you may notice that they don't have labels, so we're going to have to keep track of that. The first one was 1984. So our next step is I need to export that. So I need to save it as an image, and I want to save it as an image, and I want to know that this one is the 1984. So I'm going to call it TI versus peace years 1984. And I'm going to hit save. And then I'm going to come over and I'm going to do the same thing. I just moved over to the next. I moved over to the next plot, and I want to do the same thing with it. So I'm going to save it as TI versus peace years. And this one's 1992. And so I'll save it, and they should be out there. And I think yeah, that's what I thought. They actually are not where I really want them to be. Whenever it saved them out. And I'm sorry, that seems to be something to do with Zoom, but it saved them to the main directory, which is fine. I'm going to just select them, and I'm going to come over here to more, and I am going to move them, and it will give me an option to select where to move them to, and I want them in that demonstration presentation directory. So I'm just going to do that, and I'm going to go back to that directory and make sure they're there, and they are. And so now I'm going to get out of RStudio and come back over to LaTeX. And now I want to actually put them in here. Now I can do this manually. I don't remember the last time I did this manually, but I can do that by doing begin figure, and I want to set the placement equal to H because that's here, which puts it exactly where I want it to be. I'm not going to do that. I do want to do one thing first. I want to make an itemized list just to show you the proper way to do that. So I'm going to do this way. So I'm creating an itemized list, and the first itemized list, I want to say plot of 1984 piece years again versus transformative ideology. And to insert the figure, I could do the begin figure thing, but TexStudio again makes this really easy, especially compared to Overleaf. The last time I had to use the begin figure thing was when I did it in Overleaf. And in order to do it, the way that I did it was I came to TexStudio, opened TexStudio, did it here, copied the command over, and then had to change all the directories to make it work. And it was a real pain. I really don't get why people like Overleaf so much. I think it must be because they don't use very many graphics. So, but I can just do insert graphic, and it'll pop up with this nice little menu. And I'm looking for the 1984. So all I've got to do is click on this little thing here, and it will take me out here. And there's my 1984 plot. And I can select how wide I want it to be. And I want it to fill up most of the page. So I'm going to set it to 0.9 times the line width. And that's basically just means it's going to be 0.9 times the width of the line. If you want, you can also select according to centimeters or millimeters. You can also do it by the height instead of the width. If you set both, you can end up changing the dimensions. So you probably don't want to do that, but sometimes you may want to. There are a lot of other options that you can set this way. And you can add a graphic or a caption. So I can say data from 1984 in the caption. And I think I want this caption to go above the graphic. So I do all that, and then the position. One of the things you really want to watch is how you position it. And if you want it to be exactly where you are, so I want it to go after that plot of 1984, then I need to click that. And I have to shut that down. And then I click OK. And it copied in all this code for me. So now I don't have to do that. And I'm going to go ahead and compile it because I think I may have done something that's going to cause an error, but I want to see. So, and I don't guess I did. Give me just a second. Okay, so the only issue with this, and I'm going to solve that really quickly just to show you how it put it on two different pages. So I actually want them on the same page. And when it's that close to the end of the page, the simple way to do that is to come up here under LaTeX, vertical spacing. There are all kinds of things. And one of them is a line break. One of them is a page break. I'm just going to add a page break. And now that's on a separate page. So there's the first item. And one of the things you need to know is that you need to actually type something in that item. And if I were doing this for presentation, I would probably be, writing a paragraph describing what this is. I'm not going to actually write a paragraph, and by paragraph, I don't mean that it has to be 5 sentences with an introduction and a conclusion and a specific format, but I mean a few sentences or a couple of long sentences or just whatever it takes to explain what's going on in this plot. At the least, you want to tell what the variables are and the units of measure. And so in presentation for this lab, for the plots that you share, do that. Maybe you don't have to do it for every single one, but at least show me that you know how to do it and have it look decent. So now for this one, I'm going to, just to make it comparable, I'm going to say plot of 1992 piece years versus even though this isn't super descriptive and probably not as much as I would want to do in normal circumstances, at least it matches the format. And now I'm going to go get the 1992 data, and I want it to be the same width. I think I selected 0.9. I want the graphic above, and I'm going to go data from 1992. And if you want a longer caption, I'll go ahead and do that here just to show you. I'm going to say this is the plot of piece years versus in the versus transformative ideology for non-democracies in 1992. And then I'm going to position it. I'm going to select H. There's a little arrow here. I'm opening and closing this because I have my font size set bigger so that I can read it easier, and I can't get to the OK if I don't collapse it. But I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to compile again by clicking the double green arrows. And so there's the first plot. There's the second plot. It's also on another page. There's the there's the item text. There's the long caption. So I typed a long caption, and there it is. There are some other things you're going to see in here, like the label. And the label is not something you should have to mess with too much, but the one thing you do need to know about it is these have to be unique. If you have two figures with the same label name, they're going to conflict and you're going to get an error. So be careful of that. Basically, that's it. So other than the adding some text in order to explain what these plots are like, or what they are, and maybe messing with the dimensions a little bit if you want to, maybe make them bigger or smaller. That's it. That's all you have to do. So I'm going to save that. It is saved. I'm going to close out of that, and I'm going to stop. Actually, there was one other thing I noticed, so I'm going to go ahead and take a second just to point it out. The caption, the short caption didn't take, and I'm not sure why. So this is again the proofreading thing. We've got figure 1 here, and that should have the short caption there, but it didn't work. So I'm going to take that short caption. It's here, and if you look down here, you can see the long caption is here. Even though it's not long, I'm going to put it in the long caption place and recompile just so it looks better. So this is one of those things. You want to mess around with things a little bit. So there's that. That's right now. And I'm going to stop recording and try to finish section 4 for you.